All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the applications for the Chum Kiu form, the second form. Chum Kiu means seeking the bridge, and the bridge is the forearm. Now we call that the bridge because that's what I have to cross to get to you, and that's what you have to cross to get to me. Now, in the beginning of the form, we start out exactly as Siu Nim Tau form starts. Hoi sik section is the same. Sup ji sao, quan sao, that's all the same. That is so that you can link the forms together. Later on, you're going to leave off the end of Siu Nim Tau and the beginning of Chum Kiu and do them together as one long form. So the first movement that is really any different than Siu Nim Tau is the first punch. Chua ma yachi chun kun, or stance pivot with the straight character sun punch. Now, what I do, it's very important that you understand the very first movement because it teaches you the cue or the secret to pivoting. What happens is, I have the same stance that I had in Siu Nim Tau. That means my heels are out wider than my shoulders, my knees are bent, and I can't see my feet. So when I go into that first movement, what happens is I actually pivot that foot so that it matches the angle of the other foot. See? What I don't want to do is pivot on the ball of my foot, which would make my stance shallow and make me lean back, and my whole stance would be off balance. So from position, the very first movement is to turn that foot and keep it bent in the same way as before so that you can't see your front foot. In other words, my foot maintains the same bend and alignment. The only thing that's any different is it pivots out on the heel, and that adds pivoting power to the punch. Now this introduces us to what's called chua ma, or sitting horse, pivoting stance. What I do with the chua ma is turn, and I want my toes to move as fast as possible. I turn my feet to the same angle as each other, which is based on the Yi Ji Kim Yang Ma, or the basic stance. So I pivot and get power through my waist, through my hips, and into my movement. So in this case, it's a punch. Now at Siu Nim Tau level, you just punched with the arm using your wrist, elbow, and shoulder alone. In Chum Kiu, you're learning to take and add body power to that punch. Now we use the chua ma in a lot of drills. For example, what we call kyun siu kun, or fist parries fist. When Gavin goes to pivot punch me, I pivot punch to stop his. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and like that. We use pivot punch in a lot of the other drills as well. Like for example in the lap south cycle, here we're using the pivot punch in what I call the Bu south switch. Here, pivot punch, and then we're cycling again. So what I did was I went Bu through, pivot punch, and then again, cycling. All right, next I'm going to talk about after I finish the second punch and pull back. That footwork is called jing ma. It means to straighten the stance. We use it to mean to turn the stance back to the center from the side. Now, normally we think of our fighting position as being turned sideways to the opponent. This pivoting of the stance introduced us to that. But there are times when you would use Yi Ji Kim Yang Ma in a fighting situation. It's just not used the way you might think at first. Now, for example, if I were open with Gavin and I had thrown the rear punch at him and he blocked it with Wu Sao, in a situation like this, I might not want to do a complete pivot of my stance because if I did, I'd be turning my back to my opponent. We wouldn't really want to do that. So in a situation like that, that's where you might want to use your jing ma because you would then get a little bit of pivoting power, but you wouldn't turn your back on the opponent. So what you're getting is you're getting the ability to get some torque, but without the risk of turning your back. So I use it in a situation like that. Now in sticky hands, I sometimes use jing ma to get back to the center. So again, I won't give it my back. For example, if I used Bu here and then came in with a punch like that, in a situation here, I wouldn't necessarily want to turn completely because it'd give my back to the opponent. See, instead of turning completely, what I might want to do here is just turn part of the way to get power, but not enough to give him my back. So that's one of the other ways we would use it. Now, in a lot of the drills, we use Jing Ma to help straighten it back or to get it back into the basic drill. Example is when we're using, say for example, in sticky hands, and I want to put the lap sao changes into the roll. Say for example, I was putting in Chang Dai Jam, and I want to take it back to the roll. We both use Jing Ma to get back in. Or if I was using Biu Sao switch here, and I want to go back to the roll, I could do it that way. If I wanted to go Gum Sao switch, and again, if I want to take it back to the roll, there it is. All right, next I'm going to talk about Biu Zhong Sao, or the thrusting guard. Now, what I normally use this for is to create timing, or to use it as what we call mun sao, or asking hand. In other words, creating bridge contact when there is none. Now, when I'm faced with my opponent here in this situation, I might not want to just step in and hit because I really don't know what he's going to do. And I might not really want to open myself up to a possible counterattack without getting some kind of response or at least some idea of what he's up to. So what I use this for is an asking hand. I'll poke my arm forward to find out what I'm going to feel from him. Is he going to move? Is he going to run? Is he going to grab? What's he going to do? So I create bridge contact with Biu Zhong Sao as an asking hand. Now, once I've created that bridge contact, I might go into a number of movements. For example, situation like that, what I did was ask, and when I felt his arm stiffen up, I knew it was okay to jerk him into the punch. Then I just followed up with, whatever other movement I felt like doing. Now, I can use Biu Zhong Sao as a block. If we were closed and that jab came, I could use that to exclude his arm out, then go from there. If we were open and that straight punch came in, I could use it there to just shoot straight inside that punch. So again, here, and that would open him out. Now, this is one of the reasons why my hand is turned out. See, the Biu Sao that I showed at Siu Nim Tau level is fine against this arm. It pushes him out. But if I use Biu Sao against that arm, it doesn't necessarily push him fully outwards. So by flipping my hand over, it just gives me that little bit of extra forcing outwards of his hand. All right, another way I would like to use the Biu Zhong Sao motion is against the shove. Sometimes fights start with a guy shoving you. So when Gavin shoves me, what I do is intercept that shove with the Biu Zhong Sao. Now, as his weight is coming forward, I push him out. This doesn't really stop him. He's still coming towards me. Then I just catch him and hit him with the headbutt. And I just finished up with whatever other movement. But the main idea was catching that thing in between and, in a way, borrowing his power, letting him fall into that headbutt. All right, next I'm going to talk about Pai Jian, which is the hacking elbow movement. There's actually two elbows hidden in this movement, but we'll just talk about the one that's moving forward for right now. Now, first of all, just the action of pivoting with these elbows in this position gives you a sort of a level gauge and a squareness gauge for your pivoting. In other words, I do a full pivot till my shoulders are square to that wall, and a full pivot through till my shoulders are square to this wall. It tells me, if I'm leaning too far forward or back, side or side, it sort of like keeps you level and square and straight, and shows you that you can turn your body 180 degrees when your feet only turn 90 degrees. Now, besides that pivoting, you also get the application for the elbow. Now, Pai Jian, or hacking elbow, is used in a number of ways. If I get a hold of this hand, I can use it there or here. Against that hand, there or here. In sticky hands, sometimes I'll use that elbow right there and come across with that. Now, say we were closed. If I had attacked Gavin with pop down and he stopped me here, after having hit the body there, wham, I can use my elbow attack to the body in that way. Okay, now also within that movement is the backward cutting elbow, which I use in a number of ways. Now, using the two elbows combined together in sticky hands, after having come in with that first Pai Jian here, I use the second one to go through again and then come into here. I can use that backward cutting elbow. If Gavin was throwing a hook at my head, I could use that elbow to stop that shot too. So I'll use it in that way. Another way I like to use the elbow, when we're open, if Gavin punches here, I can get in real close and cut backwards with that elbow in this way. Or for that matter, I could have come in close here and used it as a throw, cutting backwards. All right, next I'm going to talk about Xiang Fan Sao, or double chopping hand. Actually, fan means to chop into powder in Chinese, or to separate. So this is chopping hand. Now, one of the ways I like to use Fan Sao would be in sticky hands. I like to go from the low fook sao to trap into the chop. So what I did was, from position here, is roll into that grab chop and then go in here. Now I like to go into the chop from a number of different blocks. Say open, the jab comes, I like to go into the chop there and again the retrap. So what I do is just block down the line, grab, chop, retrap. I go into a chop, say for example he punched and then blocked my chop. I can run into that second chop, which I talked about in the Siu Nim Tau tape. So that's another one of the ways I go into the fun sao. There's lots of different ways. Say for example the first punch came and I did bong and the second one came, I could go pak and go into the fun sao there. Now I can use fun sao to the body in a situation like that too. I could go pak here, pak that one, and attack to the body there, or again down here. So I can use fun sao in a number of different ways. I normally like to chop at the Adam's apple when possible. The other one I use palm up. See, I don't like to chop the side of the neck as much, but in following the form, in the form I go here and then sink, like that. Well, if I wanted to follow the exact movement from the form, I could, for example, after having chopped here, bring that hand down and go here. So that follows the sequence from the form, because it was chop, elbow. And again, here it was chop, elbow. All right, now, the next thing I'm going to talk about a little bit more about chum jiang, or sinking elbow. So from position, I twist my hand and drop and bend the elbow. So it looks like tan sao, but actually the focus is on the elbow. Now, as I showed a minute ago, I showed how after having gone into a chop, you could then pull the person down into this, an elbow strike. But you can use the chum jiang to block shots as well. Sometimes you leave your body open when you successfully hit someone. When he goes to hit you, you can use your elbow down to block. It's a quick way to pick off the punch. It also hurts his arm. If you were side kicking me in the body, I can use my elbow there to block that kick. And that's also a painful way to stop the kick. So you just smack down on the leg. Another time I like to use the chum jiang is, for example, when Gavin tries to lop and chop against me here, and his arm's got me trapped up. Another way I could use chum jiang is to smack that arm and free my hand. So in a situation there, what I did was here, smack, and that freed my hand to come up with a shot. So these are all different ways that we might use that downward hacking elbow. Now another way I might use that chum jiang straight after the chop, if I were trying to chop and Gavin ducked underneath it, that's the time you can use chum jiang as well to catch him as he's going underneath. Because he's taking advantage of the fact that you're hyperextending or overextending, so then you can just drop that down on him as he's going up and through. All right, next I'm going to talk about jipsao, or bridge catching hand. So you see that I snap towards in a circle, then I go pow with this hand and jut with the other. So I talked about this a little bit in Siu Nim Tau, but this is actually a Chum Kiu technique, combination of jut and pow. It's used to hyperextend or break the opponent's arm. Now again, from open position, when he punches, once I've come in, if he tries to shoot again with that second punch, I can intercept it with the pow and the jut at the same time. So what I did was, I came in here, and then I chased backwards with jut as I lifted with that. So that's called jipsao. Now closed, we can practice this in what I call an attack cycle, just a repeating set of movements. One of them I like to practice is, I go here with the tanda, then a jeep, and then I go here. And I circle into the next one. So it goes like 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3. And you can repeat that over and over to perfect your skill at intercepting with jipsao. Okay, next I'm going to talk about jing jiang. There are 3 of them here. And the first 2 are pulling in and protecting while shooting the other one out. Now we normally use jing jiang as a palm heel strike upward against someone who's taller than us, or at least the same level. Use it up higher. So for example, if we were closed, I would tend to use jing jiang here to strike upwards, and you'd hit and actually lift with it. So anytime that you hit something above your level and then push up, I could either use it under the chin like that, or right as you hit the face, your hand would snap up, and it adds that last minute lifting power. Now the third one, you pull one hand and you palm strike out. That could simulate attacking the person's elbow, pulling him into a bad alignment, and then hitting the elbow. Like I talked about at Siu Nim Tau, the South Sick, when he was grabbing me. When I pulled him into that awkward alignment, that's the perfect time to use that type of a diagonal palm strike. Now, something else hidden in the pull and palm strike is the waist trap, which I sometimes use in sticky hands. Say, for example, in sticky hands, I see that Gavin's elbow of his tan is not going in as far as it should. In other words, I can see a gap there between his elbow and his body. So when I see that, I can slip behind and use that same motion of pulling and palm striking here to hyperextend him in a couple of different ways. The same idea would come into play in a situation, say we're open. If he'd give me the 1, And then the two, if I get him here, the same idea of hyperextending and pulling him and pushing him is at work there. All right, next I'm going to talk about the pivot into the lan sao motion, or the horizontal forearm block. Now there's a lot of different ways that we use lan. You notice that my hand is twisted away. That simulates either grabbing or laying over trapping. Now when I say lay over trap, what I mean is, for example, closed. After I do a pak da and Gavin stops that, if I grab and chop here, that's when I like to use the lan sao. You can see how my hand is turned away from me. That's why it's turned away in the form. It simulates laying over two hands. I might use the layover trap against two hands. Say we were like this, and his hands were up closed. His hands were up high. I might use the layover trap there across both of his arms. See, what I did was I came in here, trapped the hands, hit, and then laid across both of them in that way. So I might use my lan sao in that manner. All right, now I drill into bong and pull back into lan. Now I'll talk about the pivoting bong more in a minute, but just the idea of pulling back from bong. There's a saying in Wing Chun that lan sao is nothing but bong sao moving backwards. Now, in a situation where you have bong sao already, you can use lan moving backwards to trap or pull across. An example of that would be in sticky hands. I have bong sao on my left arm, but sometimes I'll use that lan and turn into lan sao rather from bong. In other words, here I was in bong, and what I did is pivot and pull. And that's the same movement right out of the form. You know, bong into lan. So I can use it that way. Now sometimes I'll use lan sao as a pull instead of lap sao, which normally I would use. Let's say we're open and the punch came here. Now normally I use a lap sao motion pulling into my hip. That exposes the dead side, which I'll talk about more in the theory tape. But right now I'm pulling him to a position where I can hit him, but he can't hit me. So normally this is the way I like to pull, to my hip. But sometimes you don't want to pull to your hip. I'll give you a couple of examples. Once I've done bong here, and that, let's say for example I want to hit the body. Well, if I want to go with a body shot, why would I pull his hand down and get in my own way? So in a situation like that, I might want to pull across to open the body. Another time when I might want to do such a pull, if his guarding hand was a little too far forward when he punched here, I might want to then leak underneath. And in a situation like that, I wouldn't want to pull my arm down because that would get in the way of my own fist. So you'd use lan sao that way. Okay, now I want to talk more about the drilling into bong sao. You see that I go from the lan position with my shoulders square to that wall, and I drill forward 45 degrees. So I pivot 90, but my body only moves 45. So we've already seen where your pivot can get you 180 degree body turn, 90 degree body turn, in this case, 45 degree body turn. Now, as I'm drilling forward, I'm using that torque of my hips to drive and send that bong sao forward on the center line to the same place I would have punched. And I'll talk more about reference in the theory tape. But for right now, you let it suffice to say this is the first of the yang blocking motions, or strength-oriented power blocks. Now, as I'm doing this, I also retract my other hand into cow sao structure to protect my face as a second line of defense. In other words, in case that punch does get through bong, my other hand will be there and it'll be loaded. Now, in other words, what I'm saying is, when that punch comes, and if I pivot bong here, what I don't want is I don't want my wu sao hand here, because Gavin can easily trap it and punch me. So instead, I want to keep it tucked back out of the way, so it's a little bit harder for him to grab. It's also back, it's loaded up, so it can easily become a grab with some power to it. Now, this brings to mind the fact that the lap sao cycle, which we practice for speed and timing and trapping skill, is hidden right in the form. Now, at the very end of the form, you're going to see that I'm going to do a movement like this, jet punch. Right now, I'm doing this. But if you take and put them together, you have the lap sao cycle hidden within the form, just like the double rolling hands was hidden in the Siu Nim Tau form. Now, one of the ways that I would use pivoting bong in a drill is if Gavin was punching me, I might just pivot bong and practice it this way, drilling into his punch and cutting forwards. Now, also within the lap sao cycle, we can switch it over from side to side, and again, there's the pivoted bong sao working. All right, next I'm going to talk about the outward diagonal punch, Moi Doi Gat King. So you can see that from position, I lay my fist right near the elbow, and then slide across my own arm as I pull in and throw the punch. It looks like a back fist, but it's not. It's a straight punch. Okay, it just comes from the other side. In the beginning of the first form, you punched like from where the hand was to the center. This time you're punching from across the line to the center. All right, the time I would use that, let's say we were open. If I had thrown a jab and Gavin used Chum Kiu to block it and got the center line, I can then exclude that punch to the side. So what I did was I let him go the direction he wanted to go in. Now, if I had used Chum Kiu, I could do the same thing. From my own jump, I could exclude through and then follow up in a number of ways. In this case, all I did was just block, pushed it out in the direction I already sent it in the first place, then I grabbed on and kicked, and then just followed up whichever way. All right, now I also use that in sticky hands when my opponent does what's called deep jump, or meaning he has his elbow in too much. If Gavin's elbow is in so much that he's actually cramped, what I will do is take advantage of that by excluding him in the direction he already wants to go. So again, what I did was saw his arm was stuck in too far, so I just pushed it out with my fist while hitting him, and that set him up for the follow-up. All right, next I'm going to talk about the Jing Ma Fun Sau. Now what happens is from the punch, my stance straightens back to the middle, my foot stops, but my hand keeps going, and I keep my eyes focused on my fingertips. The important part here is to learn to follow something that's moving fast with your eyes without losing focus. So it's eye-focusing power you're developing, and that's an important skill. It helps you sort of slow down your surroundings. When someone's throwing punches fast at you, you don't see a blur, you can see the punches clearly. Now also you notice, I won't put the pivot in, so with the sound, you should be able to hear my hand sort of sizzle through the air. Your hand has to cut through the air by staying relaxed, so it just cuts this way. Now, the time I use that principle of the stance stopping and the hand keeps going, say for example, just from the bong again here, I can use part of a stance turn to power it, but my hand keeps going. In other words, I don't want my foot to keep going, because if it does, I'm going to turn my back on my opponent. So even though my foot stops, my hand can keep going, multiplying the power that was created by the stance movement, that little half turn. So I would use it in that way. All right, next I'm going to talk about going back into foot sau from that position. So my hand is here, and again, I whip down. Now what you want to have in this is a real relaxed whip of the hand using the elbow as a source of power. Sounds fake like those kung fu movies, but that's actually the way it sounds. Now I use foot sau to block a shot that's coming in where my hand is already partially extended. So for example, when a punch comes in, I'll use foot sau here and kind of whip my hand inward and downward. So again, it looks like that. Now, in a situation against the 1-2, I might go here and then view and then finish it up this way. So foot sau could be used to block shots that way. If we were closed, I could just reverse that type of movement. The first punch came, I might use time down. The next one came, foot sau might stop it there, and that would set me up for another combination. So I could use it there. Now, it can also be used to hit with, using that part of the hand as a strike. That's an adductive or toward the body strike. Wing Chun would like to use those type of hits only when we're either hugged or we're on the floor or in a situation where we can't get power from the floor. In other words, a lot of times you pivot and you get power by pushing off the floor. So when you can't sort of push off the floor, like someone's lifted you up off your feet, for example, you can't get any pivoting power from your feet or your hips. So if Gavin had bear hugged me and lifted me up, that's the time when I might want to use foot sau as a strike, because I can use this type of motion to get power in my hits from close range, but I don't have to use any pivoting power. I can use gravity, use my body weight to pull inwards. Now I can use those same type of hits on the floor. Say for example, I'm going to go down to the floor now. So if Gavin was sort of sitting on top of me and choking me, I might want to use foot sau either to trap here and get across both of his hands and then start hitting him, hammering him in the body or in the head. Here, these type of shots. And I would use it to attack to the temple or any of these type of things, because punching from the floor is not as powerful. It's cramped. I don't have the same kind of power that I can generate here, whipping down and whipping to attack this way. Okay, next I'm going to talk about chut sau, scraping down the arm after the low foot here. Now, as I said before, foot sau could be used as a strike. Now, in those same situations I showed standing up or laying down, after having used foot sau to strike with, you can follow up with another chop following your own hand. It's especially important in this case, following your hand, to find the target, because the times I showed you when you would normally use this type of hitting is a panic situation. You're lifted off your feet, you're laying down or whatever, you might not be able to see what's going on. So once you've felt this thing here, you can use your own arm to follow and then hit. That principle goes for other movements, not just Tutsu. In other words, if I'm here and I've done, say, Tanda, I don't need to see his arm. I can use his arm to guide me to the target again, so I don't even have to look. In other words, once you're on the person's arm, you can sort of follow it. From Jamsa, for example, I can just follow his arm to the target in a situation when I can't exactly see. For whatever reason, my head's turned, eyes are cloudy or teary, from being hit in the nose, whatever. You can follow that person's arm to a shot. So that's one of the other applications for Tutsu. All right, next I'm going to talk about the Lansao Jingya motion. Okay, I won't talk about the way I land or any of the other things, but for right now, I'll just concern myself with this. Notice that I open my hand, turn, close the fist during the kick, and then I fall down into, the next move we'll talk about on the next segment. But for right now, we'll worry about that. Now, first of all, this teaches you the very first kick of Wing Chun, which is the Jingya, or the vertical kick, straight kick, which is to take the foot and kick outwards with the shoulder square to the target. So that's the very first kicking structure of Wing Chun, keeping your shoulder square to the opponent and also, during a hand movement, still being able to kick. Now, that skill is pretty handy. For example, when we're open against the 1-2, bong, there's the move straight out of the form. See? So I went bong here, grab, pulling him across. Remember how I said don't pull down, it blocks the way? Well, that's what I meant. In this case, if you were going to kick, you'd want to pull him this way to keep the body open to the kick. Now, you also notice that one hand is pulling, the other one's pulling the other way. See, this can simulate trapping the opponent when he's trying to trap you, and using your legs to kick when your hands are tied up. An example of that would be, if I had punched and Gavin did bong here, and he trapped me. Now my hands are trapped, what I can do is simulate the movement from the form. Because what happened here is I went sort of like the form. So if Gavin disappears right now, it looks like the form. So that's one of the ways that I use that movement. All right, now I can use that same kind of structure in sticky hands when I get double trapped. Because if Gavin goes for the punch here, what I can do is, again, go with that same movement, just like in the form. Because what happened was, I felt myself being trapped up, so I followed the structure from the form and went into the kick. And I used that stupid trap from the earlier form. So we can use it in that way. Now, this also introduces us to the concept that you can block and kick at the same time. See, a lot of the times, especially when you're using yang blocking motions like Bong Sao, and yang blocks are good and powerful, but there's only one problem with them. You can't hit during a yang block. As I'll talk about in the principles tape, yin blocks, or receiving blocks, are superior because they leave your strong side open to hit. See, when you use yang or power-oriented blocks, your hitting side is used up. You can't hit with bong because you're using your power into the bong. You can't hit with this type of paksa because you're using your power, or jam. But when you're using wu, you can still hit. Gang, you can still hit. Hin sao, you can still hit at the same time. So the problem with yang blocks is you can't hit, or, well, actually you can, because they're telling you in Chum Kiu that you can kick during the blocking sequence. So for example, if we were doing lap sao, the biu sao switch, when I'm on the defense, when Gavin goes for biu here, and I'm here, and then here, all three of those syllables, I was defending, and I was using yang blocking power on two of the syllables. But instead, if Gavin attacked me and I went here, I can kick at the same time as I use a yang block. There's nothing wrong with that. They're telling you that during a yang blocking motion, it's okay to kick. All right, now I want to talk some more about the movement coming down. Once I've kicked, the way I bring my foot down straight, don't even worry about the bong sao yet, let's just talk about that. So after I kick, you notice that the leg comes down to the heel first. That in itself is called jut gyuk, or jerking leg. It's the legs corresponding to the hand. Outside jerking hand, it's the same idea, using the outside jerking hand as the outside jerking leg. They correspond, and they're used in a real similar way. Now, one of the ways that I use it is to break down the stance after I've done a kick. So when a jab comes and I've kicked, sometimes I'll just jut the guy's leg down to trap him and to knock him down, take his balance. Another time I like to use the jut leg is once I've kicked, if he tries to kick my leg, then I'll use it there to take his balance and to block at the same time. So you see what happened was I was kicking, and as I felt that come in, I'd use it there. It wouldn't matter if he tried to kick with the other leg. It wouldn't have mattered. I'd still use the same idea of the jut leg. So I like to use it there. Another time I like to use it, let's say we're open against the 1-2. Again, from bong, seitan down here. Once I get the guy's throat, jet leg against the back of his leg to take his balance. So I'm using it moving inward. Now, as I talked about earlier, with the fuksao as a hit, it's an adductive hit, meaning it comes toward the body. Now, the time, again, when a Wing Chun guy likes to use those type of kicks as an attack is when he doesn't have the ground to push off of, like when you're on the floor. Say, for example, I've been knocked down. Gavin might be on top, choking me, whatever. What I like to do is use my foot to attack with the heel. If I can get him in a situation where I can hit different parts of the spine, or if I could get him down here and hammer down the face, the body, or if we were rolled over in a situation like this, I might use it to attack down to the groin, or here, down to the face, the body, attack that way. All right, next I want to talk about the bong sao after the jet gyok, so I fall into the bong. What they're telling you is that after you kicked, to block, in certain situations you have to do that. See, normally when you kick people, they get mad at you and they try to hit you. You know, most people don't like being kicked. Now, in a situation where, for example, in a drill, I put in a kick. Let's say, for example, we were doing the lap sao cycle, and I was doing the Chang Dai Jian switch with the kick. There I had to land with bong sao because he was responding back too quickly for me. See, what I had done was I was attempting to go kick there. But what Gavin did was see the opening, he wants to punch me in the face. So I have to be able to quickly fall into a block. So there's an example of how I would use it nearly exactly as it is in the form. Now if we're closed, say for example I've kicked him in the knee and he tries to punch me as I fall, I have to be ready to follow up with a block. You know, I wanted to maybe, I had intended to come down and hit him here. But before I got a chance, I saw a punch coming, so I had to be prepared to block on my way down. All right, next I'm going to talk about the drop down to the Chum Kiu motion, so, which means sinking bridge. Now what I'm doing here is dropping my hands down with a twist. Now this simulates sinking the bridge, which I'll show you, and it also literally is a way of, you know, hyperextending or breaking the person's arm. Now for example, against the 1-2, I might stop the first with the jab and then receive that second one here. See, and that would be the arm break or hyperextension you could follow up. So again, I went here and then received with that sinking twist of the hands in between. Now, I could have used it after having hit him. Say the jab came and I hit the body. Now he tried to hit me. Again, the same movement. I've come in, hit the body. When that one tries to hit me, I can hyperextend his arm, and again, there. Now, one of the ways we practice this movement is in an attack cycle, a repeating set of movements that go over and over. So, for example, it would be like the punch comes, I'd hit, Chum Kiu, unit out. Bong, hit, Chum Kiu, circle out. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, and so on. Now, sinking bridge is also the idea of letting your hands sink under pressure. Sometimes the opponent is counting on you being very stiff in the arm when he tries to attack you, which would shock you. Say we were here. Now, if Gavin wanted to do pak da, pak and punch, if my arm was stiff, I would get jerked into that strike. And he also gets extra strength because he can push off of my hand. So in a situation like this, that's where you use a sinking bridge, meaning you let the bridge fall out from under him. You know, like in those Indiana Jones movies where they burn the bridge and as he's crossing it and it falls out from underneath him. It's the same idea because he's expecting to stand on a bridge and you let the ground fall out from under him. All right, another way I like to use Chum Kiu is when I hyperextend his arm for him. In other words, like in sticky hands, sometimes what I'll do is I'll pull the guy to full extension over my arm as I'm hitting him. That sets him up for the shot. So what I did was just from the tan sao, scoop out, pull him to full extension and hit the body. And you can sort of dig in with that knuckle right there for that extra pain. Then here, go into the arm break, and then in this case I just pushed it down and went into the diagonal punch. All right, next I'm going to talk about to ma bong sao. Now you notice that from the Chum Kiu here, what I do not do is I do not go step, bong, slide. That's not the idea. What you want to do is from here, you want to go step, bong, slide. Now this introduces you to to ma footwork, step, slide footwork, which is used in a lot of ways. But just the bong sao itself gives you the clue to what's called leakage attacks. Now leakage attack means when a person thinks he has everything airtight, you leak in through a gap in the middle. Now an example of a leakage attack would be if I had thrown the punch at Gavin and he used a perfectly structured bong sao to stop me. perfectly structured, everything's there, there's nothing wrong with it. But by using my own bong sao structure here, like turning into my own bong and putting a fist on the end, I can leak through the middle and then attack. Now, this movement also introduces us to, like I said, toma, step slide footwork. Stepping and sliding, stepping and sliding. Okay? What you're doing is taking one step of a few inches with the foot and then sliding up to recorrect the stance. Now, I might use that moving forward towards the opponent or sideways. There's a lot of times when you use step slide footwork to get a little bit of extra power in your move and to close the distance. Say, for example, we were closed and that first punch came in. I might want to step in to get a little bit more distance, and here to get a little bit more power. Also to check the leg, to set me up for sweeps or whatever else I might want to do. Now, if we were open, again, I might want to use step slide footwork with bong just to help me get to the outside of his foot. In other words, I don't want to end up getting knocking into his foot when I'm doing bong, and I certainly don't want to end up on the inside of him. Say I didn't move and he stepped to the outside. That ruins the structure of my bong sao because I'm unbalanced. All right, next I'm going to talk about the short pivot of the hips with the uppercut, Chum Kiu. All right, now that is an uppercut, which there are two versions really. There's an uppercut that goes upward and there's one that goes kind of straight. One of them is based on tan sao, one of them is based on pao sao. But both are called Chum Kiu or drilling punch. Now, one of the ways that I use it in sticky hands would be from position here, I might, from right here, pull into the landa Chum Kiu. On the other side, it would look like this. From right here, I go pull and uppercut. So this is a situation where I would use the lan and at the same time uppercut. Now, if I'm on the inside, I can leak from bong position here with the same type of movement with a hin sao. See, what I did was right from bong, I just spread him open and dropped in this way. Now that would work if we were open and that jab came again here, I might leak up through that gap in the middle. I've shown that already earlier when I was showing the lan sao. But this is one of the times when you might want to use the uppercut. Another technique I showed at Siu Nim Tau was once I've gotten the 1-2 taken care of, that's a good time to use the uppercut right there because your hand is down, ready to come up, and his chin is exposed from underneath. All right, another chi sao or sticky hands attack I can use the Chum Kiu with is sometimes I like to use 3 in a row. So from the roll, if I feel his elbows out a little too much on his foot sao, what I'll do is go 1, 2, 3 and come in with 3 uppercuts. So I come here 1 with the hin sao, 2 with the lan sao, 3 with the gum sao. All 3 are uppercut attacks. All right, next I'm going to talk about the chun ging kun, inch power punch. So from the uppercut position here, all I use is a little twist of my hips and I drive downwards into chop kun structure with inch power, short power. Now short power is used in a lot of our hits. To use this movement exactly as it is in the form, it would be something like this. Say we were open and I was trying to use the uppercut to hit Gavin in the body, but he stops me with the jam sao. That's a situation where I might want to just pop into that low punch straight in from the chop kun. Okay? So in other words, what I did was I tried to hit and I felt it get stopped. So I just 1 inch powered it in and then followed up. Same thing in sticky hands. If I was trying for the uppercut and Gavin stopped me here with the jam, there's another chance for that inch power punch. But the inch power idea is applied in so many ways. I mean, anytime, say we're closed, anytime I blocked here, I don't want to pull my hand back to get power. That wastes time and it might get me hit. So instead, from where my hand is, I should learn to punch in with that kind of power, short power. Even if I'm really close, my hand could be even this close, I could still get a snappy punch with short power. Sometimes you don't have much room, so you just have to hit from where you have space. All right, next I'm going to talk about jing ma lap sao. So from the side stance, I turn my stance back to the middle, and I grab to the center. This is the root of what's called fan sao, or trapping hand. One of the ways that we grab in Wing Chun is with a whippy, relaxed grab. Your hand should actually sizzle the air with its grabbing power. Now the way we use the fan sao, for example, there is a drill called the fan sao drill in which I practically tap myself on the shoulder and then whip grab. And again here. So it's like, see, I use it that way. Now, another way that I use that fan sao, let's say, for example, we were open like this. If I had, for example, done pak da here, I might want to get some grabbing power for my follow-up. So in this position, I did jing ma lap sao. So my hand was extended, and I turned my stance back to the center, so I don't give him too much of my back. I only turn back to the center, and that gives the power to the grab and also to the punch. All right, now another way that I use the fan sao is after what's called jeet gyuk, or stop kick. Say, for example, against the 1-2, Gavin gave me 1 and 2. Now, what I did here was stop the first shot, and then I received the second shot, or rather, I intercept it with the kick. Then from here, what I'll do is use the fan sao to trap that already extended arm and capitalize on my descending momentum. All right, next I'm going to talk about the skip front kick. So what I do from position is I pivot, slide up, front kick, and my foot is slanted out again. So I pivoted, I slid my feet together, and then kicked. We won't worry about how I put my foot down just yet. Now what that's designed to do, closed, is designed to close the gap. In other words, if I try to front kick right here with this leg with no jump, I'm not going to be able to reach him, or I'm going to have to go way off balance to reach that leg. So instead, what I do is slide up, and that closes the distance, so I can come in with my kick and close that gap. See? So it slides up, closes, kicks. Then I can follow up in a number of different ways. Now, if we were open, it'd work the same way. Wouldn't much matter. Slide up, kick, and go in. Now, it doesn't have to be a front kick. It could be any of the kicks that we do. You know, I could slide up and do round kick, for example, to the leg. Sets me up. The way I put my foot down set me up for a trap. It could be any of the kicks. I could come in, slide up, reverse round kick to the groin. There's a lot of different ways you could go. The main idea here is skipping into a kick for power and to close the gap. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the way I put my foot down after that kick. So once I've turned and kicked here, you notice that I put my foot down, and it kind of might look like a fancy movement that doesn't have any practical application. But actually, there's a good reason for it. There's a few good reasons. One of the reasons is, after having kicked, it sort of chambers you and gets your hips ready for another kick. So it gets you all twisted up and ready to kick again. The main application for it, you see, normally when you kick a person, it's sometimes hard to kick twice in a row. In other words, when let's say we're closed. Now, in other words, if I have kicked the first time, just like in the form, and if I put my foot down forward, it becomes difficult for me to kick again because I'm very close to my opponent. So it's kind of tough that way. So that's why you see a lot of times guys are sparring or whatever, they'll throw one kick and then jump back. So what I like to do is, instead of that, is I like to kick here and then put my foot down, and that allows me to be close enough to kick again. Now, it wouldn't matter to me if my opponent moved backwards or not. Like I showed that combination a little while ago, where I threw the punch to get his hand up, and then I side kicked here, there I can follow him as he moved backwards. You see, it wouldn't matter to me if he didn't move at all. Here, I just plant close and kick again. And if he moved a lot, I just go here, plant further forward, and kick again. So it allows me to make that decision at the last possible minute where to put my foot down. I'm just following him. All I do is maintain the upper body distance as I put my foot down. Now, another way we might use that is open. Now, the way I put my foot down could be, after having kicked down to the groin, for example, I could fall into this position, locking the knee, then spread him open for an attack with the knee. So all I did here was come in, kick to the groin, slide down to a locked knee position as I hit. Then from here, spread him out, and that opened him up for the knee shot here. So this is another reason why I use that twisted knee lock. All right, next I'm going to talk about Wang Gyuk, plant close, Wang Gyuk, land as normal. Now, what that's designed to do, it brings in, secondly, the side kick. As I was talking about, the Jin Gyuk, or front kick, was the first kicking structure where your shoulders were square to the opponent. Wang Gyuk is the second kicking structure where your shoulders are 45 to the opponent. In other words, when I'm square to the camera, I can throw the front kick. My shoulders are square. But when I throw the side kick, my shoulders are 45 to the camera. Well, that's what I'm talking about in relation to the opponent. Now, the time I would use that side kick, for example, just from right here, I might turn and kick right there to the knee. So I turn my front foot, wham, side kick. Now, if my opponent reacted by moving backwards, that's when I'd use that cross stomp and kick again. So, again, from position, I turned, kicked, he moved backwards, I followed him, and then kicked again. So that sets up my distance. Now I can use side kick, say we're closed, and he's going to kick my knee with that rear foot. That's it. So he's about to try to kick my knee. I can use side kick to stop that kick. That's called a jeet gyuk, or stop kick. Slow motion. You stop him by kicking him right across the shin, and then go in with your strike. Stop kick, like I showed earlier, in that one combination where he was doing the 1-2. Say, for example, 1-2 here. I might go here and then wham, stop kick. Meet him as he's coming in. So I stop the first shot, second one, capitalize on his power coming in. So I can use stop kick in that way. So there's a lot of different ways you might use your side kick. As I showed before, you can use it with a skip. Say we're closed. I might use a skip side kick to come in, close the gap to attack the knee. You know? And all I did there was close, side kick to the knee, and then plant trap hit. All right, another way I use that straight knee lock is after the round kick. Say, for example, I skip round kicked in. I'd follow his leg down to a position where I have it locked, and again, I have the sweep. Now, if we were closed, it'd be the exact same thing. I'd come into the groin shot, slide down the foot, and then again, I have the cross sweep. That could be followed by a stomp. All right, next I'm going to talk about dropping into the double low bong sao and flipping up to the double tan. Now, you notice that as I step forward, I catch up to my hands and I sink, and my wrists are closer to my body than my elbows are. And at the same time, my body sinks backwards. Then I flip up, and my body raises from the spine. Now, that teaches us sinking and raising. But first of all, the low bong sao as a block. What I do not do with low bong is if a punch is coming at me low, I don't just bat it over with low bong. Situation like that, I prefer to use like chum sao or gum. Okay? The time I like to use low bong is from prior bridge contact. Say, for example, Gavin had stopped my first punch and then scooped me open and tried to hit. Now, the raising tan would then come in against that next shot, the tan that came up. See, in Siu Nim Tau, bong, and then tan went down. In Chum Kiu, it's low bong, tan going up, so it's backwards. And it's used in a little bit different way. So again, it was like stopped here, and then here I had to move in with that raising tan. Now, another time I like to use the low bong sao is as a sinking bridge, like I was talking about a little earlier. See, remember I was saying that when Gavin hits down, I let my hand collapse into the low bong structure. This way, I can then go into that raising tan to create the trap. So I gave him butter and let my hand collapse under his trap. Then from there, raising tan, got him into the stupid trap situation. So I'd like to use it in that way. Low bong sao in itself as a block is not as effective just out of thin air. It's normally executed from bridge contact. Now we have a drill that we practice. Say we're both pivoted towards the camera. So I go to throw the punch and Gavin goes jam, hin, hit. Then again, jam, hin, and hit. And in the meantime, I'm using dai bong. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we use it there. Okay, next I'm going to talk about double jut, stepping up to Siang Ma Po Pai. Now, this introduces us to a couple of things. It's sort of the same motion that we had in Siu Nim Tau with the double jut, but from a side reference. So you turn sideways and you're pulling to your belt. Then you're stepping up with the palm strikes. Now, you could take and separate those into different applications. For example, you could mix jut, palm strike, and footwork off of either or both hands any way you want. Like, for example, you could go jut, step in, palm strike. Or you could go jut, jut, step in, palm strike, palm strike. Or you could go jut, palm strike, step in, jut, palm strike. Any different way you want to mix them. Now, this does introduce us to Siang Ma footwork, which is advancing stance. That is to step through and slide. So from position, like I turn my foot, step through and slide. If I wanted to come in with a punch, I might step through and punch here. Or in a double punch, I might step through, punch, punch, coordinating the feet and the hands. So Siang Ma footwork could be done with a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be that palm strike. You could do it with any one of a number of different hits. Example, we're closed, and Gavin starts backing up. I can follow him with that punch, just stepping through. Or, another example might be if I were here and I was moving in and Gavin decided to punch me, I might step in and end up doing bong sao. So you can do Siang Ma footwork with blocks, punches, or both. In that same situation, I might step in here and do a tan da. In that situation, I was stepping in, the pivot was giving power to the tan, and the step slide was giving power to the punch. Now, another application for the po pai sao, or the twin palm strike. What po pai means in Chinese is chest breaking or chest smashing hand. Now, as I showed before against the hook, the Wing Chun man uses what's called wu pak sao to stop the hook. He treats the shoulder as the center, as Gavin's half of the center line. Right now, because that punch is coming in from a different angle than a straight punch would, I changed my center line theory, and I think of Gavin's shoulder as being his end of the center line. You'll understand more about that when you watch the theory tape. But for right now, let it suffice to say that normally in a long-range hook like this, I'd like to use a double block. This attacks his wrist, at the same time attacks the bicep. So if he punches hard, it hurts his arm. The harder he punches, the more it hurts. Now, if that second hook came in tight, I do not have time or space to do Wu Pak Sao. I'll get hit because it's too close. So from a situation here, that's what Po Pai Sao is designed for. So what you'll do then is stop it from the bicep and the chest. Stopping the chest kills the punch from its source. And stopping the bicep just makes sure that you don't get cut just by some residual garbage that's swinging by. So in the double hook situation, it would look like 1, 2. And again, it goes, and you stop it from its source. All right, next I'm going to talk about the Kwak Sao, or spreading hand, which is nothing more than 2 Hyun Sao motions. In other words, from position, I spread, snap, circle, snap, and then pull. Now, Kwak Sao is a double usage of the Hyun Sao motion. Say, for example, in sticky hands, I'm in here. What I'll do is, from my Tan Sao position, hook him open and go for the attack. Now, what I did was kept this one the way it was, circled that one out, and spread. That created the opening for me to move in and hit. Now, I might do other things there. For example, during that spread, because Hyun Sao kind of grabs onto his arm, I could use other types of motions that would capitalize on it. Example, I might here spread open kick, plant trap and hit. You see I trapped his foot, make sure he doesn't kick me on the way down. So what I did here is spread him open and kind of held on, and then kicked him. Then I fell into my punch while checking the foot. Another possibility from the Kwak Sao position is to spread him open here, headbutt, and then hit him. Now, what I did here is spread the hands open, wham, headbutt, then finish with the hit. Now, you have to be careful when you do that, because if Gavin tried that on me from position here, I might use my shoulder to stop him there. Okay, next I'm going to talk about Toi Ma, which is the slide back pivot, or the retreat of Wing Chun. It's not exactly a total retreat, because as you swing back, you're getting power through the pivot. You're sliding the foot backwards and then pivoting, giving you power into your technique. So I could slide back and do a yin block. I could slide back and do a yang block. I could slide back and do a yin-yang block. Or I could slide back and do a complex attack, or any one of those type of things. So there's an exercise that we can do called Man Sao, which helps us develop that Toi Ma footwork. Now, in a situation here, if Gavin had done Pak Punch and I did not use Toi Ma footwork, no matter how well my block is structured, I might be a little cramped in trying to block. So what Toi Ma footwork does is it allows me to have more room, it gives me more power, and at the same time gives me more time. So this is what we would do to practice moving backwards into our block. Now, switching sides, I could do the same thing with Jam Sao as the block. Or again, switching sides, I could do the same thing with Bong Sao as a block. And each time I'm pivoting into the motion. Or again, switching sides with Fuk Sao as the block. Now, again, what I could do is add follow-ups. So where I was just doing Pak before, I could follow up. So in other words, how fast can I come back and hit my opponent? Or if we wanted to go back into Jam, I could Jam here. How fast can I come back with some sort of an attack? Or from Bong Sao, I could go in, Bong, and then again, how fast can I get back and hit him? Or again, from Fuk Sao, I could go here, and how fast could I get back to attack him? All right, next I'm going to talk about the circle side kick here. So what I do is I actually, from position, look back, circle my foot, kick slightly behind me, and then land. So I kick to the original center line, the place that I was first aiming all my punches at before I started walking around. So I go behind me, circle kick, and then come down. Now the way I use the circle kick, well, there's a couple of ways. First of all, say we were just closed like this. It's a little bit difficult for me to just come right in and kick Gavin in the body because his arm is in the way and stuff. So sometimes I'll circle out and around to kick from an oblique angle. In other words, by stepping here, I kick him from an angle that he's not used to being kicked at. That must have hurt, sorry. Okay, another time I like to use the circle side kick is when a guy telegraphs a big punch. Sometimes guys will chamber and then throw that big punch at you. So as soon as that thing gets chambered, wham, I catch him with the circle side kick. So what I do is I lean back and then wham. Now the circle sort of helped me take up the distance, us being this close. If I just try to lift my foot straight up, I might run into his leg, or I might have trouble getting any real power because his body's in the way. So the circle helped me chamber. Now the same thing, I got to do this one slow. If Gavin was going to go round kick me in the spine, like that, that's a time when I use a circle side kick up underneath to the groin to stop that kick. All right, next I'm going to talk about the second circle side kick. This one circles around and kicks in front of you before landing. So whereas the first one kind of kicked behind you, the second one kicks right in front of you, and that's important. We'll talk about this part later. Now that second one circles out and around an obstacle. Now here's an important thing. If we were closed, for example, and I had worked my way in with whatever technique, and I was shin to shin with Gavin here, this is the time when I couldn't just pick up my foot and side kick because his leg's in the way. So this is the time when I have to circle to kick. Now another chance for that same move, if I had swept first, I can't just pick up my foot because his leg's in the way. So that's the time when I have to circle side kick. So no matter what the technique that got me in, sweep, circle side kick stomps him down. All right, I also use circle side kick quite a bit when I do what's called chi gyok, or sticky foot. Now in situations where our arms are locked up here and our legs are touching, what I like to do is circle around that leg to a side kick. So in this situation, circle around, kick. If I was on the inside, I could circle around, kick. If the other leg of his was up, I could go circle around, kick. Or if I was on the inside, outside here, circle around and kick. So I use it in that way. Another time, if we're closed, and Gavin was going to, say, kick his front leg to my front leg, there. Sometimes what I'll do is circle side kick to the base leg. So my leg's not there anymore for him to kick. All right, now I want to talk about the way I land. After the circle side kick, I land in the gum sao. Now you notice that the leg that kicked is not the side that does gum. The non-kicking side was the one that did gum sao on the way down. Now there's a reason for that. This introduces us to what I call plant, trap, hit. Put your foot down while trapping and hitting. Well, in a position where you've kicked, say for example, I did a kick to his knee. What in general I want to do is I want to trap with the non-kicking side. Why? Because the kicking side is the descending side. It has more power on the way down that I can put into a strike. So, unless the situation calls for it, why would I want to sort of waste that descending momentum on the trap and not have it in the punch? So in general, anytime when you kick here, you normally want to hit with the side that's falling. And that's what they're telling you. After having kicked, trap on the way down, use your descending momentum into the hit. Use the non-kicking side for trapping. Okay, next I'm going to talk about taikun, the raising punch. Gum, taikun. Now you notice that this gum sao has a bent elbow. That's to act as a shock absorber. Then you raise straight up to the punch. And again, here, and you put up your hand to protect. This is showing you to guard your face. When your other hand is doing something, if this hand doesn't have anything else to do, it should be protecting your face. It's like a tennis player playing in the middle of the court. Now, after you finish the gum sao, you raise up to the punch. Straight. You don't sort of retract your fist first. Now, that's used here. Let's say we're open, and Gavin does a punch low to my body. Once I've done gum sao here, what I don't want to do is retract, because if I do, that other hand is probably going to hit me while I'm preparing. So instead, after this, I want to go straight up to the punch. That's called taikun, a raising punch. The low punch again, here, and then up. Now the reason I keep my elbow bent here is it acts like a shock absorber. That's especially important, like if it was that knee coming in, because you need some power to stop that knee. You're not going to be able to stop it. If you straighten your arm and that knee is powerful, you're going to get launched because you don't have anything to absorb that knee power. If your arm is locked, it's going to lock your bone structure and lift you. So you don't want that. What you want instead is to be able to let that elbow absorb some of it. Now even in that situation, after having done that, you could still do your raising punch. So anytime your hand is low in Wing Chun, even if this punch was down low, if that hand was down low like that and another hook came, I could still use a raising punch there. Anytime your hand is on the low line Don't waste time retracting your fist. Go straight up to the hit. All right, next I'm going to talk about gum jiang, which is also known as jun bak. Now, in Siu Nim Tau, I talked about gum jiang, and I showed some of the applications, but it becomes a little bit more clear now with the pivot behind it. This also is called jun bak, which is turning shoulder. So you remember at Siu Nim Tau level, I talked about some of the different ways we use gum jiang. One would be if Gavin had punched me and I pivot bong, then I could use that gum jiang to strike down as a cut. You remember also that if he bonged against my punch, then I could use gum jiang as a leak through. And you remember that also if he tried to chop me here, I could use gum jiang as a break. So those are some of the different ways I use it. Now, all those use the front shoulder. Remember I showed you an emergency block and some other things I don't want to repeat. Also, as I mentioned briefly earlier, if Gavin tries to do the headbutt from the kwak sao, wham, you can use your shoulder to block that as well. Okay, next I'm going to go with the lap sao loi fan kun. So you notice that from position here, I grab and circle through to the punch. So my hands do a little circle. Now in the next movement, it goes straight. So in the form, after the 3 gum jiang, I go circle, hit, and then pull hit. Now first of all, just that circle hit in itself. Remember we had bong sao earlier in the form pivoted? Now if you add this, there's your lap sao cycle. Remember we were showing that earlier. From position, the lap sao cycle is here. And there's a lot of different combinations that we go through. The fan sao switch, the cheng bai jiang switch, the bu sao switch, the gum sao switch, the pak sao switch, and some others. So that's the root of the lap sao cycle right there, because we had the 2 elements, the bong and the lap hit. Now you notice that in the form, the first one from here, circled and hit. The second one, straight and hit. Now that's important, because in application, the time you circle is when there's something in the way. Example, when he punched and I did bong, I can't go straight into punch. I have to circle because there's something in the way. But now, there's nothing in the way. So to follow the form, here, circle punch, straight into punch. Now if Gavin had blocked the punch, here, blocked, straight into punch, straight out of the form. Or if Gavin tried to punch again after I hit him, straight into punch. So there's a couple of ways to use the move straight out of the form. All right, next I'm going to talk more about the jut da, or jut punch, and then finishing with the next punch. Another way we might use the jut sao strike there would be in sticky hands. If, from this position here, Gavin decided to step in and palm strike my chest to try to collapse my structure, that's a time when I might want to use that. So as he comes in, jut, there's the jut sao. Now at the same time, I could apply that same punch here. Well, in this case, I used the palm strike because my hand was already open. But I could have just as easily punched. And then again, pull punch, straight out of the form. So I could use it in that manner. Anytime in sticky hands, when you want to just pull the guy into a strike and follow up with another strike, you're using that same kind of idea. Now that finishes up my explanation of the Chum Kiu form. In the next tape, I'll be talking about Buji.